there, Safecrackers, get your combinations ready because it is time for the Comic Vault. Today on the Comic Vault we have 3 issues. We have Skaar, Son of Hulk, The Savage World of Skaar. Yeah. We also have a couple books by Stan Lee. We have Stan Lee's Just Imagine Shazam, creating with Gary Frank. And we also have Stan Lee Meets a Thing. So let's start with Skaar, Son of Hulk so that we can keep the Stan Lee books together. Skaar, Son of Hulk is a one-shot that takes place roughly between issues 3 and 4. You don't necessarily have to have been reading Skaar, Son of Hulk, but Savage World of Skaar is supposed to be, as the front of the book says, a one-shot. Now, what this book is about is they have a little camp set up where they are discussing Skaar as if he is a potential horrible guy as opposed to a world-saving individual. They are doing the same thing that they did in Planet Hulk, where they're trying to decide whether or not Skaar, like Hulk, or as they called him, Green Skaar, was somebody who was going to destroy the planet or save the planet, because there's a bunch of prophecies. So if you like the idea of sword and sorcery being added to Hulk, then maybe Planet Hulk and Skaar, Son of Hulk, is something that you're interested in. The trouble that this book runs into is that it has too many parallels with the original Planet Hulk. I'm not entirely certain that I believe that Skaar is supposed to be somebody uniquely different than the Hulk, or if this is supposed to be Planet Hulk continued, saying that we know that you enjoyed Planet Hulk enough that you would be interested in continue reading it, so we're going to give you more of the same. Now, that being said about this book, I don't guarantee that about Skaar, Son of Hulk. The regular series might be better. This one, it gives you a little bit of information about Skaar. It gives you a little bit of information about Skaar in relation to the Hulk. Now, one of the troubles that this thing runs into is that it's a collection of short stories. There's no real solid story within this. There's nothing that's really a through line other than people sitting in a camp talking about Skaar, and Skaar sitting there eating a metal person. So there are some funny things. I think that's my favorite thing, is that Skaar sat there and ate a metal creature. And they say to him at the beginning of the book, you know, we do have this actual food over here that you could eat if you would like. And Skaar continues eating it, because that's how he lived in the swamps. There's metal creatures in the swamps. So there are some interesting, fun, or quirky things about it. But ultimately, most of the people in this book, their names are forgettable if you haven't been reading the regular book. And I find myself being hard-pressed to really care about what happens within the book. In fact, the last 2/3 of this book is a recap of what happens in Planet Hulk. So, in my opinion, if you're interested in this, you should just go read Planet Hulk. Because it's great. And if you're interested in this, then you might consider reading Skaar, Son of Hulk. I don't know if that's good or not. They do have a slight character-defining moment for Skaar at the end of the book, and if you're interested in reading it, I'm not going to reveal what it is. It's pretty obvious once you get there. But I'm going to move on, because I feel like any longer on this book would be belaboring the point. I don't like one-shots that are not one-shots. I want a unique story. I want a one-shot that is this many pages without this much filler, because a third of the book is too much space to not have story, and you're wasting the printing material that you have available. Moving on to Stan Lee Meets the Thing. Stan Lee is, interestingly enough, he always has this sort of arrogance and low self-esteem at the same time, and I find that comes out in this book. Since he puts himself into it, he has to belittle himself. And he makes the Thing almost seem like a jerk, because he's saying things to the character Stan Lee that are just kind of cruel. Like, he calls him, I think at some point he calls him Fleabag, and he's just rude to the guy. And Stan Lee characterizes himself as arrogant, at some point in this book, the Thing says, well, I'm having to put up with all of these guys on Yancey Street because this yahoo, Stan Lee, wrote about it at some point. And Stan Lee says, well, it's your lucky day because I'm Stan Lee and I can help you out. And the Thing says, oh, you're the guy. So it's kind of quirky, it's kind of fun, there's not a lot of story, there's not a lot of things that happen in it other than the Thing being annoyed on Yancey Street, Stan Lee riding around on a bicycle running into him, the Thing being rude to Stan Lee, and then Stan Lee offering him his help, and then the Thing refusing his help because apparently he's a babe magnet. I don't get it, but he is at the end of this. And then they have a short one by Roy Thomas, which is actually really interesting, and it's about Stan Lee being during World War II, trying to be a writer for the war cause. You know, he's writing instructional videos and things like that, and they say, I want some of your heroes to be in this. So he thinks he's going to get his big three, you know, well, the big three, not necessarily his big three, but Cap, Namor, and the Human Torch, and instead he gets Destroyer, Father Time, and Jack Frost. So it's kind of fun to see some of it's kind of fun to see some of the B-listers make it on. And Destroyer, by the by, is not necessarily bad. He's kind of different, but the story is that Stan Lee, he hires these guys, they trash his office in big bravado, very Stan Lee-ish, to have people do that. They're good guys, but they're supposed to be doing something funny because they trash his office. But then they go out, they find Red Skull, they beat him up, and Stan Lee sees this happen, relives the situation, and writes his story, and then films it, and then he submits it. Now, the one thing that makes this story really worthwhile you can really feel Roy Thomas's love for Stan Lee, and I do think that even though I'm not a big fan of Stan Lee's writing style, Stan Lee is a guy that Stan Lee is a person that you can't not respect. You have to really enjoy Stan Lee's mind and his method, and he comes up with characters that are just really fun. Now, I'm going to reveal the end of this particular short to you because it's just a collection of shorts. Stan Lee sits there and he sits back and he wonders, will I ever create characters that are worthwhile? And the last panel is a bunch of characters that Stan Lee's created, all sitting behind him as he says this line. And what Roy Thomas says is, he puts a little editorial thing at the end. He says, guess we'll just have to wait and see, Stan. And I really feel the love, and I think that's really important for something like this. And I like that we have Stan Lee writing something where we see his sort of low self-esteem and how that affects the universe, which is weird. But and then we see Roy Thomas. Wait, Roy Thomas? I think I said Roy Thomas. Then we see Roy Thomas and writing that, and I feel like it's entirely worthwhile. And then we actually get a Stan Lee written Fantastic Four script at the end. The issue is, and I'm not going to review that issue because that's a reprint. It's issue 79. So, Fantastic Four 79, about the Thing after he had his Thing powers cured by Reed Richards, and then he does things. Anyway, moving on. Just imagine Stan Lee's Shazam. I could almost review the entire series by saying this. I've said it before on the channel, I'll say it again. Stan Lee has some great ideas, and these books reveal some of his great ideas, but his execution is not particularly sophisticated. So, without further ado, Stan Lee just imagines Shazam. And I was really excited about this book. I wanted to see what he did with it. I wanted to know what the big pink or purple monster was about. I really wanted to know. And especially since on one side he has no wings and on the other side he has wings. So essentially, for those of you who don't know what Just Imagine is about, Stan Lee did some recreations of characters for DC, and it's called the Just Imagine series. So Stan Lee seems to be respected across the board regardless of publisher. So in this book, he uses several characters, so you get somebody that he creates as Shazam, and there's also a short in the back for Billy Batson, but I'll get to that later. kind of Billy Batson. So you have these two main characters who they work for. Oh no, I've forgotten who they work for. Either way, they come on the scene later. They start with Merlin and Morgana. So that's really, mixing things up and trying something different, and I can totally respect that. I don't necessarily need the exact same characters in the exact same universe. What's the point of recreating a character if it's not different somehow? And I find that to be highly respectable. So yeah, good job. So the book starts off with Merlin defeating Morgana and creating a creature that he is going to store for later that could defeat Morgana whenever she comes back to power. Morgana eventually comes back and is serving some guy named Dark, who I have seen the HeroClix figure for, recognize him as a DC Comics character, and know nothing about. This book tells you nothing about him either. It's kind of interesting that you would have your major villain in the piece, or somebody that you would set up as the major villain in the future. Granted, they knew they were only going to make a few of these. But it's interesting that you would have that person serving somebody else. I find that to be interesting because you could play with that. Is she really serving him? Is he somebody that really has control over her? Is she going to break past that control? I don't know. They don't deal with it too much in this book. They move directly on to these people who work for some law enforcement agency, some investigation agency. I forget at the moment. I don't think it was entirely important, but the female character knows martial arts, and this guy's apparently just a bookworm that becomes Shazam. He runs into Merlin, she tries to save him, he gets his butt kicked, and then he becomes Shazam because Merlin lets him have the power. Merlin's dying because he was just beaten. I sort of find it a little difficult to believe that Merlin would be defeated quite so easily, even though he is an old guy. He'd been around for several centuries, but he's a magician. he's a magic user. I just find it hard to believe that a couple of assassins with knives and whatnot could defeat Merlin. But, so the woman gets captured, and the man gets tied up, thrown into some body of water, and says the word Shazam under the water with some really convoluted way to bring him to actually say the word Shazam, and especially since he's drowning. And he turns into this big genie guy. And he goes around and he decides that he needs to save this woman. And the villain is a guy who has a shrink ray, and bottom line is, he saves her. And she also fights with him. There's not a lot to it. It's cute, it's fun, and I think that this is something that they could have gotten a little longevity out of. I'll say this, most of these Just Imagine stories are something that they could have gotten a little longevity out of, and I think that's a little bit to its credit. I think that's what Stan Lee's good at. He's good at coming up with ideas that have potential, and I think that maybe Gary Frank should have had a little more to say with what actually goes into the script, but maybe I'm wrong about that. Maybe they're in total agreement. The short that's in the back of this book is fun, I think. They have a guy who goes to this young boy named Billy, and the man presents himself as Ambassador Batson, and he says to Billy, I'm here to help you out, yada yada. I want you to know that kids can make a difference, yada yada. And so Billy gets together with one of his buddies in this foreign country, and I'll admit I forget the name of the country at the moment. But and they end up saving the village's food rations from, food supplies, I'll say that. It's not like that was given to them. It was taken from them by some marauders of some kind, and Billy and his friend, his local friend, managed to save it. And the guy, Ambassador Batson, gives them some honorary captainships, we'll call them. So one becomes Captain Novotny, and the other, Billy, becomes Captain Marvel. So Shazam in this book is this guy, and Captain Marvel is Billy Marvel, honorary captain of whatever these people are serving. So, I think this book's worth checking out. I think it's fun. I think if you're going to check out any of the books that I've recommended today, I think this one's the one you should check out, because this book is a one-shot that really didn't deserve the paper that it was printed on. It's not important. Just read the regular series. This book is fun. I think it's worthwhile. I also think you need to have some understanding of Stan Lee. And this book has some great ideas. The execution might be a little bit hard to get through. So that's what I have on the vault for you today. Thanks for ringing your combinations, kiddies. And remember, you can donate to, buy from, and generally enjoy the Comic Vault. Just go to wearegeeksnotnerds.com and click on the Comic Vault. You can find cool stuff on eBay through us that way. Also, Geekvolution's P.O. Box is 14183, Lenexa, Kansas 66285. Yes, I'm reading it. Don't judge me. And so if you guys are interested, if you'd like to send us stuff that can be reviewed on the Comic Vault, you can send it to that P.O. Box. If you would like to buy things from the Comic Vault, you can go to the website. Thanks for watching, guys. We'll catch you later.